thank you all for coming tonight. The few but the mighty. Always appreciate the same faces in the audience. It is streaming, so we'll be able to publish this later, but this is something we always look forward to. It's part of our annual tradition since Dr. Johnson got here, is the State of the District Address. We think it's important to highlight some of the past year wins and also talk about where we're going. I always talk, we're very blessed to have Dr. Johnson because he is one person, unlike many other school districts in our area that have multiple people helping out. Dr. Johnson does it all, so we are very grateful to have him as a leader in this district and looking forward to hearing your remarks. Dr. Johnson.
Oh, thank you for that warm welcome. What also goes hand in hand with doing it all. I can't blame anyone, so take responsibility for it. One thing about doing the State of the District, traditionally schools do this in February when there's not much going on. Everybody, really wants to get out of the house. Yeah, right. Shovel snow, whatever the case may be. But my first year here, we talked about what can we do to mix that up a little bit, maybe build some excitement for the beginning of the year. I'm not going to lie, it'd be nice to fill the auditorium so people could hear it firsthand, but nonetheless, we're glad that all of you are here, and maybe word of mouth and technology will help make sure that everybody hears what we have to say. Okay. Tonight I want to talk about quite a few things, and first up, obviously, as we always should, talk about first would be the students. This is what matters the most. This is the reason why we're here. And a specific question that a lot of people in this room are probably going to laugh at when I say this out loud because they've heard it from me before is, I always say, is this good for adults or is this good for kids? Now, if it's good for both, that's awesome. And we can move along and everybody's happy. But ultimately, as adults in the education world, we have to be worried about, are we doing what's best for kids? Sometimes that means we're not doing what's best for adults first. But again, the people that are in education, I think, definitely understand that. And again, it's because kids are a first priority. And I see most of the principals are smiling because, again, they've heard me ask that before. Our students, what do we think of when we talk about our students? They're resilient, they're reliable, they're remarkable, and we hope that at the end of their 13 years with us, they're definitely ready. One thing that I can say in being a product of Sherrard schools, leaving, spending the majority of my career elsewhere, and then coming back for the twilight, if you will, of my career is our kids can compete with anyone, anywhere. And I truly mean that. So here's just kind of an impromptu story to recognize that. Went to visit my new granddaughter in the hospital and in Iowa City, and somebody in a helicopter flight suit walks in. And my daughter, long story short, she had went here to Sherrard with my son-in-law and had graduated together. And, we were just chit-chatting a little bit. And, of course, my fiance and I found it just fascinating listening to her. So you're a registered nurse, but you technically are kind of like a paramedic. You fly on a helicopter every day. And, of course, the reason she was able to come up to the room and say hi to Rachel and the baby and everything was because there were massive thunderstorms hitting Iowa City, so they weren't flying anywhere. But just a completely random occurrence that here comes somebody that, is a product of Sherrard, went on to graduate from Iowa and now is flying, saving people's lives in a helicopter every day. So kids from Sherrard can do anything they want. Our graduation speaker last year, Superintendent of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, class of 1986, Sherrard High School. Don't ever let kids, any of us, don't ever let kids from Sherrard think that they can't do what they want and they can't compete with anyone they want because they're from a small high school or what would be considered a small high school in the state of Illinois. We're always, as educators, we're always going to make sure that they're pumped up and they understand you're going to have the background to do whatever you want to do. If you take advantage of it, the sky is the limit, literally. Our staff, I put this up here last year, and of course, if you're as old as I am, you immediately think of the old Chevy commercials. But again, they really are the heartbeat of the district. Nothing happens without our staff members. And again, I'm going into my 4th year here, and I can honestly say that all of these things are definitely true. They're very talented, they're very dedicated, and they're very hardworking. I know there's a lot of them that are here far before me and far after me during the day, and it's great to see. And they're all here for the right reasons. And I think that one thing you can say about life in general, and certainly with education, is like-minded people tend to collect, okay? And that's really what has happened here at Sherrard, because we don't have a lot of what you'd say are naysayers. I mean, there's not a lot of negativity within the buildings. There's not a lot of negativity on the staff. And I think that the positivity of the people that are here is contagious. And those people who might not be, completely happy with what they're doing, perhaps they find somewhere else, or those positive people are rubbing off on them. And we've seen a lot of changes over the last 3 years. Hopefully that's kind of at an end. But again, I'm very proud of our staff and what they do day in and day out. They're consistently doing what's best for students. And I can say that first question I ask, is it good for kids? Is it good for adults? Is it good for both? I've had to say that fewer and fewer as the years have went by. One example of what we're doing here is this November at the statewide school board conference in November. It's commonly referred to as the III conference because all of the professional organizations, state school board association, business officials, administrators, they all begin with I because we're in Illinois, so we call it III, real creative, right? Most time refer to it as the school board conference, but we've actually been selected for one of the primo 10:30 a.m. spots on Saturday to present what we're doing here to reduce teacher vacancies. So we're part of a pilot program in the state of Illinois, a teacher vacancy grant. It's not a lot of money. I mean, it's about $94,000 out of a $20 million budget here at Sherrard. So if trust me, $94,000. Yes, it's a lot of money to me, but it's a drop in the bucket for a $20 million budget. But what we've been able to do with that is try some creative things and see what we can do to keep people here, to incentivize people to stay here and get better, and then to recruit people for any open positions that we have. And it's really that $94,000 has allowed us, again, to just try different things. But the overarching message with all of this is we've kind of, as administrators and board members, made sure that we've changed our behavior to make sure that it's an outlook. It's a way of conducting ourselves that we're going to make sure that people are rewarded, we're going to make sure that people can better themselves, and we're going to make sure that we're spreading the message that, hey, you want to come here and be a teacher if there's an opening. And again, so far it's seemed to have worked. Again, we got the primo presentation spot. I hope it goes well. It'll be Mr. Fullerlove, our board president, will be the moderator. One of our teachers, Mr. Veranda, is a product of the alternative certification. So he's already retired from one career, went back and got his teaching degree, and now he's starting a new career. That's a very popular program that multiple colleges have, and at WIU it's run by Dr. Jim LaPrade, who was he was the co-chair of my dissertation committee, so I've kept in touch with him. So when I pitched this idea to him, he didn't ask when, where, how much. He just said, if you get the joke, whose car are we taking? He was 100% in. So we'll be presenting that, and again, it's more about what we can do with continued success with this type of behavior, with this type of program, even after the money goes away. Next thing that obviously is easy to talk about because everybody gets to see it are our facilities. And with the facilities comes, what are our future needs? What are we going to be looking at doing in the future? So let's recap real quick what happened last year. We'll go school by school here. Winola Grade School. The biggest thing that we did at Winola was we completed the new front entries, both at the north and south ends that face west. Those were original to, I believe it was I know it was 1978 because I started school there when it was brand new in second grade. I guess I just aged myself. But those were steel entry doors. Well, salt in the Midwest, we all know what happens even if you keep it painted over the course of 20 years or whatever it's been. All that's been replaced with new insulated glass and aluminum, and it looks really, really sharp. You can't tell it from the parking lot, but as soon as you walk up on it, it definitely looks good. Like the rest of the schools, what Winola now has are double secure doors. So we essentially have two beepers. If you've been to the schools this year, you understand what I mean. But if you were there last year, you had to buzz in. So you had to get through a locked door to get in there. Now you go through two locked doors. There's two buzzers and two cameras at every front entrance that personnel in the office can control. So nobody's coming in, even, it sounds harsh, but nobody's even coming in out of the rain unless we know who you are and what you want. Okay, and again, I think for the safety of the kids, it's well worth it. But again, Winola's was a little bit easier because we were replacing the whole door. We didn't have to retrofit anything, and it was good. Another thing that you'll notice in the front of Winola and the other schools are the new branded window clings that offer a little bit of privacy, so you can see out, but you can't see in very well. And they also just make it look great. They're branded with the official mascot and the official colors. So again, it was a nice facelift to all the buildings, not just Winola. Future, what do we have to look at? Right now, we're looking at lighting and ceiling upgrades, and then Winola is also going to need some paving. The vast majority of Winola out front is asphalt. There's no concrete, and the buses over the course of many, many, many years, we're probably going to have to look at doing something there, maybe paving to expand the parking lot. But again, the big ticket items are probably going to be LED lighting and new ceiling tiles, because again, when you get buildings like that, Winola kind of had the bad rap of the HVAC system. I don't know that it was ever appropriately sized or working from the get-go back in the 70s, so all the ceiling tiles tend to sag a little bit in that humidity, and I think that's one of the things that it might be a little bit pricey, but it's definitely a big upgrade with lighting, and you know, it just makes the building look better and people feel better about that building when you see it, or any building for that matter. Sherrard Grade School. Sherrard Grade School was the recipient of a massive construction project and upgrade and expansion over the last 2 years. So Mr. Wyant with a smile on his face back there is looking forward to zero construction this year, right? So also completed the double locking doors at the front entrance. And also the future for Sherrard is there's going to be quite a bit of landscaping that's done. I'll talk a little bit about that later with the student advisory board, some of the ideas that they came up with, because the landscape itself, the topography of Sherrard Grade School really changed when that addition was put on. So we've got a lot of opportunities. Paving, we had to do a little bit of paving because it broke up during construction, but there's still some more that we can do. There's still some roofing at Sherrard that's starting to age a little bit, and then again the lightings and the ceilings. And again, we're kind of in the middle of getting pricing on all the LED lights and new ceiling tiles for all the buildings at this time. Sherrard, you know, that expansion, you know, there's always growing pains. It's been a little bit of a challenge in some areas, but by and large, it's been very enjoyable, and the facility is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to give one shout out to Mr. Wyant, because this guy's a bulldog when it comes to making sure contractors are doing contractor things. So he really makes sure that if he knows the contractor's going to be there, the general, he's got the punch list. Here's problems, you know, but all valid, and it's all things that just they don't slip under the radar. So we're very thankful that Mr. Wyant takes care of those things. I know I am. Matherville. Also, the new double front door locks had some HVAC changes. Mr. Schillinger, I'm going to apologize in front of everybody. That's been a tricky thing to get working right at Matherville. If we have any Matherville teachers in here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was there last week, and I think it was Thursday or Friday, and I walked into one, and Lord knows I like a cool environment, but I thought I saw my breath just a little bit, but then I was okay, because when I went in the next room, I took my jacket off because it was a little warm, and I think I said to Jeff, I was like, well, this is the same system, right? And he just laughed and didn't say anything. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but you know, maybe just growing pains. It's new, so it can be worked with. And then again, Matherville's another area that we could use some landscaping. Probably going to be looking at some paving. They could definitely use a little bit more parking lot area, and just like the other schools, lighting and ceiling tiles as well. Okay. Up here at the junior senior high school, I had some excitement this summer. Completed the courtyard path. If you haven't had the opportunity to go to the website and look at the video for what our summer crew did with the courtyard, it's pretty awesome. They basically put a 4-foot path around the perimeter with really, really nice concrete pavers. So when you walk out there and you look at it, it's just like, wow. And our kids did that, you know, our summer crew. There's some college kids and there's some kids still in high school, and they did all that. They did the layout, they did the digging, they did the wheelbarrowing, and don't forget where that courtyard access is down a hallway. That was all shovels and wheelbarrows from kids. There was no skid steer or, you know, motorized power or anything. It was all those kids shoveling in, shoveling out, digging, and it's beautiful. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that video yet, take a peek. Otherwise, talk to Mr. Johnson or Mr. Stromquist, and they'll take you out there. We're going to transform that from the outdoor classroom concept to like a gathering or showplace concept. We'll still have a fair amount of plants that everybody will be able to go out and see and take a look at and label, you know, for the biology aspect of it. But again, it's going to be a little bit lower maintenance and a show place where people are going to want to go and take prom pictures or graduation pictures. Okay. Redid the practice field. If you notice that, again, this year we're not going to have cars parked out on the majority of the practice field. You're going to have to park around the perimeter or on the other side of the gravel drive out there to make sure that we keep that very nice. Essentially what we did is we worked it up about a foot deep, flattened it off. It's not perfectly level, but it is perfectly flat, where there's a tremendous amount of flat space where the kids can practice, and it's not as hard as an asphalt parking lot, which is awesome as well. Okay. We redid the Gym 1 floor. If you are sticking around and go to the library, peek in the doors before you go down there. If you're not going to the library, peek in the doors before you leave. Beautiful refinished floor. It's got all of our newly branded colors on it, and the age of the floor, it was to the point where it was due to be sanded and refinished. So we did that this year, and we're able to replace it with the proper colors, and it again, it's beautiful. So stop and see it if you haven't. And then finally, we're redoing our shot and discus areas, also out back by the practice field, kind of between the practice field and the wind turbine. We're going to have the facility that is much like things we do here, the envy of the conference. It's going to have fences for safety, nets, and we're going to have 3 discus rings and 3 shot put rings. So we'll have a ton of room for practice, and we'll have a premier facility for competition as well. Finance, if we're talking about all that fun stuff, we've got to figure out how to pay for it. We don't have our official audit in yet. They were in last month and went through everything and at the beginning of this month. But the preliminary numbers show that, again, unchanged over the last decade, our financial position is very strong. Our December levy, we levy for property taxes in December. For the 8th time in 9 years, the tax rate dropped. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, my tax bill went up. Yes, it probably did because your property appreciated. However, we have consistently lowered over the last 9 years, 8 times, and certainly in the 4 years that I've been here, 3 years that I've been here, we've dropped it pretty significant. So over that time, the rate has dropped about 55 cents. And we've got our preliminary numbers for the tax settlement, and that number's probably going to be closer to 65 cents when it's all said and done. So again, very, very financially responsible conservative board that essentially says, what do we need? And that's what we're going to ask for. You know, a lot of common practices with schools are, okay, we have X amount that we can ask for. We're going to ask for that and a little bit on top. Sherrard hasn't had to do that. Okay, financial responsibility has been at the forefront for a long time, and it shows. When we did all those projects over the last couple of years, the money that we borrowed was at historic rock bottom levels, and then it was coupled together with a lot of the one-time grants. So when I came in and was interviewing and asking a lot of questions about this, because it had all been set in motion about the time I was interviewing for this job, I was very happy this last point, and it is something that I will always go back to, is Sherrard was kind of the poster child for, oh, this is one-time funding. Most of us refer to it as COVID money. This is one-time funding. We're going to do one-time things. So the HVAC, being at Matherville and at Winola, the addition at Sherrard grade, the renovations here at the high school, one-time money for one-time things. A lot of school districts ended up getting themselves into a little bit of trouble because they greatly expanded their staff. Well, that's a recurring cost if you expand your staff, and I'm not saying that that's not awesome if you can do it, but when the COVID money runs out, who's going to pay for it? So I personally was extremely happy with my financial outlook that the district used, the board was wise and used one-time money for one-time things. For the funding of the facilities, what are we going to do to make things happen in the future after borrowing at historically low rates? We know that's not the case right now. What's going to happen in the future? Well, if you've looked through the prospectus, and there's a bazillion points in there and it's a lot of information, one thing that you're going to see is the reason that Sherrard School District, one of the reasons we're so highly financially rated, is our bonding capacity is not even at I think it's about 24% of what we're legally allowed to borrow. So if you have a credit card and it's $10,000 legally, okay, then we're at like $2,400. So we're barely scratching the surface of what we can borrow. Now, having said that, I'm not in a big hurry to run out and check out the rates right now to borrow for an upcoming project. But what I'm saying is if there's a rainy day, the board has been responsible enough that there's plenty of money in the bank if we have to do something. One of the things that we'll talk about in the future, and you'll probably hear me say it again tonight, we have to start worrying about the HVAC system in this building. Okay, about 20 years old, about a 20-year lifespan. Okay, and something in a building like this is probably going to start over $1 million. Okay, we got a lot of money in the bank, but I don't know that we can just write a check and do that right away. Okay, so definitely some big things coming up. So I'll be polite and just say uncertain federal obligations. I don't know what's happening with our money from the federal government right now. For example, we were told there were several line items of title funding, and title funding is kind of how schools get their money from the federal government. We were told don't plan on that because it's not going to be there. Well, then the wonderful Miss Adams comes walking in my office with a balance sheet and says, hey, we got Title II money. I thought that went away. I go, it did. And she's like, So I don't really know what's happening. To put it politely, I don't know that there's a plan. So we're just going to kind of hope that it comes, but not count on it. Okay. Ensuring a fair tax structure. That's one of the things that I just got done talking about with the tax levy for property taxes. We're still significantly below, excuse me, what the state of Illinois thinks we should be according to the evidence-based funding model. Now that is kind of what transformed funding in the state of Illinois. When my first meeting as a superintendent at a significantly smaller district was we're $70,000 short on what the state was supposed to spend us or send us. That'd be about like $700,000 here. So I kind of freaked out a little bit. Well, then the next year, the state had passed the evidence-based funding model, and as a result, for the last 7 years, things have been pretty good, to put it bluntly. But we're still not at what the state considers an adequacy level, okay? However, we're not going to go after that in terms of filling in the gaps with property taxes, because again, the philosophy of taking what you need to do a good job is always going to win out. Okay? And again, people are probably tired of me here talking about lighting and ceilings, but again, that's probably going to be the number one thing on the list this year. Okay? What does our future hold? Well, we are updating our curriculum across the board, so to speak. The big thing this year, we worked on a selection process last year, an implementation process this year for K-6 English Language Arts, and the implementation again is now underway. Essentially, every kindergartner through 6th grade will have the exact same experience no matter whose class they're in, no matter which school they're at. Okay? We have a unified curriculum. One good thing about this is it's not a boxed curriculum where there's absolutely zero academic freedom. Because I know even at the elementary level, academic freedom and how I do things and to have a little bit of flexibility is extremely important. Okay, you know, we don't want just push play, that'll teach the kids. No, we have great teachers. We want to make sure that they are able to, you know, do their thing, so to speak. But again, at least we now have a common roadmap. Mr. Steve Miller's here with us tonight. He's our K-6 curriculum director, and he has been working extremely hard to get this going and to make it happen. One thing about curriculum is you can have someone who is extremely brilliant and knows the ins and outs of curriculum design, but if they can't talk to people and make sure that they understand why we're doing this, it's pointless. Steve, we're lucky that we have somebody that can do both things. He understands it and he can sell it. And teachers, to be blunt, teachers believe in him and what he's doing, so it's awesome. And then on top of that, the principals, as I look at them smiling back there, you guys aren't responsible for that piece of it, right? Next, will be a math curriculum. This is probably going to be a little bit tougher, to be blunt. Right now, math skills are probably the toughest conversation to have in education because they're just not where they need to be. And yes, I live with a math teacher. No, I don't have the answer why. Okay, I'm hoping Dr. DeVolder over here is going to school me on it and make sure that I can learn. But nonetheless, if we can have a common curriculum, so at least we can get kids moving in a common direction and make sure that they're all getting the same thing, it's much easier to make adjustments when you have that. And again, the ongoing curriculum work will also be the alignment of curriculum between the 6th and 7th grade years and the 8th and 9th. Transitions are the toughest part for education. You know, to be blunt, that's when you lose kids, all right? I was a high school principal for 7 years, and I can tell you, all those kids that were not on track to graduate as juniors probably knew that by Christmas time of their freshman year, because that transition from middle school or junior high to high school was so difficult. So we've really got 2 transitions that we worry about here, from 6th grade at Matherville to 7th grade at the junior high, and then from 8th grade into the high school. So those are the things that we're going to be focused on this year. Okay. We're probably going to have to look in the future to adjust our calendar a little bit. I know we have early outs right now because of the schedule of the time frame of the teacher's schedule. Those are not incredibly useful because we just simply don't have enough time to travel between buildings, and you only get so much when you're on a Teams call or a Zoom call. We want to make sure that we can be able to adjust things to have teachers give them time to work together. I don't know what that looks like, but we're going to have to start exploring some options for that. Articulation, you know, we have that new curriculum. Teachers from Sherrard grade have to be able to work with Winola to make sure we're all doing the same thing, we're all approximately the same pace. What works for you doesn't work for me. What works for you, maybe I'll steal that. We need to be able to get them together for the articulation concept. And then identifying efficiencies in our school structures and staffing. We are not immune to the challenges that are facing most small districts, and that our enrollment right now is not growing. It's shrinking, to be honest. So we need to start looking at, you know, how many teachers do we have to have? Now, having said that, it's not to set off a panic that there's going to be any kind of a reduction in force. I'm a firm believer that if somebody's retiring and perhaps we can absorb that position because enrollment has shrank, that's what I would prefer to do. Okay, and right now, like I said, finances are good, so we don't have to look at drastic situational changes. But again, if we can do something, save money through attrition, that's always better than telling someone, unfortunately, you know, our enrollment has shrank to the point where we don't need you the next year. This is interesting. Did anybody see I think it was Texas State Legislature yesterday had passed, they were one of many states lately who had passed the state law saying no more phones in the classroom. And then I can't remember what station I was watching, but they were showing the lock-in, lock-out pouches. So when kids come to school, they get a pouch, they have to unlock it, put their phone in there and snap it shut, and then they can use the same machine to unlock it at the end of the school day. Several states are taking that decision out of the hands of the schools, and they're just saying no more phones in the classrooms. I don't think we're there, and I think, again, at a school like Sherrard, the compliance of our kids is awesome for the most part, so I don't think we have to worry about that. But that can be an uncomfortable conversation because there's probably a lot of parents that understand, is that screen time issue detrimental to my kid's education? Probably. Do I want to be able to get a hold of my kids anytime? Probably. Okay, and again, I'm a dad too. I just sent my youngest off to college. Woohoo! No, but that's a conversation that we're going to have. But again, in terms of Sherrard kids, very compliant. Talk to the high school administrators. They've made some changes over the last couple of years, and it hasn't been. We haven't needed to, how should we say, lobby the state government to say yes, take them away, stomp them out. Okay, but again, something certainly to keep an eye on, and it goes beyond the phones. It's also with Chromebooks. You know, I don't know an easy way to put this other than to say that I was a political science major, and right now this second piece is what concerns me more than anything. Okay, so like I said, just sent our youngest to college. Second youngest is 20, going to be a junior, and he's still not back to college yet, goes back in a couple weeks. So I'm able to test this theory on a daily basis, being a young man, and I think that they're probably some of the most interesting creatures around in terms of what kind of knowledge do they take in and what does it look like and where are they getting it from. But this is a very real issue. Can students effectively sort out the sources of information? Because the argument for a one-to-one, everybody gets a Chromebook, everybody gets a device, is the world is at your fingertips. Okay, well, there's also another old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So if kids are consuming media that's inaccurate or information that's inaccurate, how do we help them through that? How do we make sure that they know how to identify sources that are valid versus sources that are not valid? And no, I don't have the magic answers, but I can tell you, yes, it does keep me up at night. Strategic plan updates. This was, several of you probably received this email. This was a tremendously heavy lift, if you will, this past year. We went through, and these are the initiatives, if you will, broken up into 6 different areas that we are going to attack to make sure that we have a solid plan for every aspect of what we do. So what happened this last year was the Board of Education had created the goals and individual outcomes, SMART goals, so that we have, they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're time sensitive. It wasn't just, oh, hey, this sounds like a great idea. No, very well thought out goals. We used community input to determine the wants and needs. Most of you probably received the phone calls or the survey to see if you wanted to be a part of any of these subgroups. And then we had, basically the way that it worked is each principal and myself had one of the 6 areas, and then we worked together with the school board members who were interested in that and the community members who were interested in that. Had meetings in the evenings to brainstorm and determine which direction we should go. And that is all been gathered, presented to the board. So I would probably next month is when you're going to see the strategic plan unveiled. And I would guess this is at least a 5 to 6 year outlook on what we want to have happen in this district over the next 5 or 6 years. Okay. Communication, also a key part of our strategic plan. A couple things that we changed and that we're going to be doing this year is the OWL camera. Most of you probably have seen an OWL camera or at least seen the product of one and you don't even know it. That's the smart camera that when you put it in a meeting, it follows whomever's talking. okay, so that it'll focus in, but it'll show on one person, but it'll show everything else. So all of our school board meetings are recorded with an OWL camera so that you can go to the website and check it out if you're not able to come, okay? It's not being recorded on an OWL camera tonight, but the portion in the library will be. Also something that's new for me, stretching my comfort zone, is the Beyond the Bell podcast. Mr. Fullerlove and I, probably at least once a month, are going to sit down and talk about what is happening essentially behind the scenes. What's going on? You know, if you see me in the parking lot or see me in the school, say something. Hey, why don't you guys talk about this? I've always wondered about that. The first episode is up and posted, and what we talked about were all the facilities changes that we had this summer. So take a listen to that and feel free to critique that. I'm sure Reese did a fabulous job. I probably wasn't bad just because I have a face made for radio, so we were good to go. I always tell kids, you know, you need to tell us what you need, and you need to be involved. Don't just be a passenger. You know, yes, as a 50-something-year-old father, I'm a pretty big fan of, you know, if a kid is okay and quiet for a while, I don't have a big problem with that. But to be realistic, we need to make sure that kids can communicate and that they know we're listening to them and that what they think matters. So what we're doing here at school every day affects you, so tell us what's going on. One of the things that we did this last year was both semesters we had a student advisory board where we took 3 kids from each from each school from the oldest grade level. So here at the high school, obviously, it was seniors, junior high, 8th grade, and so on. And I met with them individually, and we basically talked about what can we do to make the school better in terms of your academic experience, your social experience, and your extracurricular experience. And the only guidelines I said was, don't tell me you want to buy stuff, because stuff might be too expensive and stuff breaks, and the money for stuff might not always be there. So what we want to look at are changing the behaviors. And I think it was very powerful because both times we did it, we had a tremendous gathering in the library, and the kids were fascinated by that, and even if they were super nervous, they were more than willing and ready to go to present to the school board what they'd talked about and the ideas that they'd come up with. So keep a watch out for that, because we'll make sure any of those ideas that are implemented, we want to make sure that those kids get credit for it so that they know, hey, I spoke up, they listened, now it's happening. And it was a lot of fun for me on top of it. Future concerns, again, we're just like most districts our size. Vacancies are always going to be a problem. Our location, being right next to the Quad Cities and larger schools, presents some challenges. Obviously, the bigger a district is in the United States, probably the more that it pays. Now, I know challenges come with that, but we also do tend to lose teachers to the Quad City schools rather frequently just because of the pay structure. You know, no hard feelings, it's just the reality. It happens everywhere. But again, vacancies are something we have to worry about. Scheduling and transportation. As our enrollment shrinks, what is the common sense approach in how we structure our schools and our transportation? You know, I'm old enough to remember when high schoolers rode in the back of the bus, and if you're a kindergartner, you rode in the front seat. Well, now we have 2 bus routes. But what happens if the financial realities say we have to run 1 bus route? I don't know. Not real excited about it, just from a parent call standpoint, you know, and you know, the nervousness aspect, you know, but what happens? You know, eventually on some of these things, we might be forced to make some decisions based on financial realities. Energy efficiencies. When I drove up, the turbine was spinning. How about that? I don't know that it's making any energy, but it was kind of spinning, so I, you know, did a little golf clap and moved on. Interest rates. Right now, again, as I said, borrowing money for a big project is not particularly appealing because I see what we're paying on the bonds that we've got about 11 years left on that were borrowed for the big construction projects over the course of the last couple of years to what the bond rates are right now potentially. So not real excited about that unless it's a situation where we have to worry about it. But If we do have to borrow money like that, bonds don't necessarily have to come out of property taxes. So we've got some options. And then finally, the levy rates. As long as it's financially feasible to keep dropping the tax rate, I can assure you the board will do it. So even if your tax bill goes up because your property appreciates, that means that we're probably going to be able to keep dropping the property tax rate in terms of how much we collect per $100 of valuation, if that all makes sense. Questions? I either explained it or put you all to sleep. Either way, it's a win. I do want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, I try not to talk for too long, but it's easy to get excited. It's easy to get passionate, which means eventually it's pretty easy to get buried in the weeds of digging around, making sure that you find all the positive stuff that's happening. If you've not yet had a chance to look through it, the prospectus that we had printed up, I think it's 15 pages this year. If you can read through that and not be smiling, I would be impressed, because there are so many positive things that are happening at our schools. There's so many positive things that are happening at our district. I'll always be the loudest voice for Sherrard District. I'm proud to come from here. And I'm proud of what our kids do. I'm proud of what our teachers do. I'm proud of what our staff and administrators do. And I'm proud to work for a school board that keeps the right things at the front. You know, they really do. They're an extremely diverse group of people with a lot of different outlooks and backgrounds. And it's fascinating to listen to the conversation and hear the discussions and then look at the decisions that come out of that. So, if you've been around as long as I have, you know that there are oftentimes public boards, whether that's at the local, state, municipal, whatever you want to call it, county. Sometimes they don't jive and sometimes they don't gel. And sometimes there's a lot of problems. I'm very, again, fortunate to work for a group that's had extreme stability here for a decade. So I want to thank the board as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We'll take a brief break and then we will reconvene for the exciting part of the board meeting in the library. If you'd like to stay for that, we would love to have you. Otherwise, there's plenty of drinks and cookies, and don't forget to check out the gym floor. Thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it.